This could be the most expensive money you've ever saved if you try and pinch pennies on your advisors.
Sure.
It's an investment that you're going to have to make that should pay for itself in spades if it's done correctly.
Sure. Hi, I'm David Katz, Chief Collaboration Officer.
And I'm Shaun Hardick, CFO and Head of Mergers and Acquisitions. We lead deals at Redwood Services, one of the most prolific investors in the home services industry, where we've raised and closed over 60 deals and $2 billion in total transactions.
We're the guys who get excited about doing deals where everyone wins.
It's not only that we're passionate about it, but we enjoy sharing with the people who benefit from it most, home service business owners.
These are our insights, real, honest, and authentic.
Welcome to Sell Yeah.
Let's get into it. All right, Shaun, owners will normally only sell a business maybe once or twice in their lifetime. And there's a lot of pieces to the selling of a business, and there are fees that are involved in selling a business. Today's episode, we'll talk a little bit about what those fees are and what the owners should expect to have to pay. So I'll turn it over to you and let you kind of go through a list of what sellers might expect to pay in fees.
This is everybody's favorite topic, which is how much money do I have to pay to get this stupid thing done? So let me just go through a couple of buckets, but the whole overarching theme, I think, of this episode is that this is a very complicated time in your life. It's emotional, it's technical, and it's something that you need help with. And making sure that you have the right counsel through a variety of advisors is going to be important to make sure it gets done effectively and that you're protected and set up for success in the future. We'll go through each of these kind of in more detail, but the first big bucket that you should expect to pay for is the lawyers. The lawyers are going to run you anywhere from $25,000 to upwards of $150,000, depending on the size and complexity of a transaction. But they're really what ultimately is going to make sure that you're protected within the docs and throughout the process as we kind of progress through what it is that we're doing to get this thing done. So the one thing I want to say about paying for lawyers, do not use your family probate attorney or your estate planner or somebody who has no experience doing M&A. M&A legal advisory is a huge area of practice, and we need to make sure that we've got somebody who knows what they're doing within that ecosystem.
There's an expertise to it.
Absolutely.
I think the lawyer is probably the most expensive part of what you're going to have to pay for as part of the transaction, but also probably the most important part of the transaction.
We'll talk about it later. If you have a banker or a broker, that's probably the most expensive thing to pay
depending
for.
on how big the deal is.
Yep.
Sure.
But in general, legal fees are expensive, and there's a reason for that.
What's the lawyer's role here? What is the lawyer actually doing as part of the transaction?
Yeah, good question. There's a few main buckets. The first one is they're going to be papering the deal. They're going to be going through all the major documents, whether it's the purchase agreement, the go forward operating agreement, any employment agreements you may need, any ancillary documents like a lease or incremental kind of ancillary items. But the main portion is the structuring and making sure from a tax perspective you're set up appropriately, making sure the assets are transferred depending on the deal type, and just getting all the documentation done.
Sure.
And then kind of the final piece is diligence and just all the admin prep that are required to get through a deal, which takes a lot of time and effort, and you need somebody who could run fast and do things quickly to make sure the deal gets done.
And that's why you need somebody who's an expert, because if you haven't done this before, there's a lot of pieces of it that you probably are not familiar with.
We have done so many deals, David, where somebody hires a non-experienced M&A attorney, and it's really challenging to get a transaction across the finish line, particularly because people don't know what general norms are or even like what normal types of terms would be.
Yeah.
And so it just makes things a lot more challenging for everyone.
And sometimes some of that work falls on our attorney to do, and that's something that we don't really like.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Okay, you were talking about taxes. Let's move on to an accountant. Where's an accountant in this world here?
Yeah, so I think that you could bifurcate the accountants into two main ecosystems. Number one, there are going to be accountants that usually the buyers hire to do diligence on the business. And that's things like doing quality of earnings or cash proof or just combing through the financials to make sure that they understand the earnings base of the business. And then the second piece of that is a little bit more personal, and that's what are the tax implications of the deal structure and the overall ecosystem to you personally.
Sure.
And there are certain things that accountants can do to help facilitate making the tax burden as limited as possible, or help you facilitate exactly what might be the best type of deal for you, the seller. But that's really what they're trying to do throughout this ecosystem. So you should definitely have your tax advisor involved.
But the accounting team that does the quality of earnings or the cash proof, that's generally paid for by the buyer, not the seller, right?
The buyer would normally pay for that. Sometimes you might want to have a sell side Q of E done, depending on the size of the business. I would say that's less common in the size of the home services deals that we're doing, but it does happen sometimes.
Sure. Okay, and what else? What about estate planning? Who helps with that?
Oh, just for the accountant, real quickly, you should probably expect to pay somewhere between $5,000 and $50,000 for that type of advice, depending on the size and scope.
Sure. And then, like I said, estate planning, that could be probably a hybrid between a lawyer potentially and an accountant, right?
Yep, absolutely. Just whoever you trust to help manage whatever it would be to have a lot of liquidity in your life, which is something you're likely going to be dealing with for the first time. Make sure that you have the appropriate counsel to help you plan for what the next generation looks like, and make sure you're set up for success. It's just somebody you're going to want to talk to.
That's great advice. All right, and let's talk about a broker. You mentioned it before. Where does a broker fit in?
Where does a broker fit in? A broker fits in kind of across the ecosystem. Now, I want to caveat, you do not always need a broker or banker to help sell the business. There are times where they're beneficial. There are times where they get in the way. But the main role of a banker or a broker is to build depth in a market. That means to bring buyers to the table, to generate interest in the business, to position the business for success in a transaction process. They're generally trying to structure it more of an auction, such that you're trying to maximize the highest dollar. And then they get paid a percentage of the fee to make sure that they are aligned with the seller on the outcome. So the higher the purchase price, the more they get paid, and vice versa.
Sure. And what generally is a range for a broker getting paid, and who pays that?
Usually, I would say the range is somewhere between 3% and 7% of the overall transaction value, depending on the size of the deal. But the person that pays for it, if you, the seller, have hired that person, you're likely going to be paying for it. And if there's a buyer that had a search firm that was reaching out to you, you're likely not going to be paying anything, and the buyer will be responsible for the fee.
Right. Okay. And then what are some other fees we might have to consider?
Yeah, just as it relates to going through the process, there's likely going to be a financial advisor involved. That's kind of like somebody on the estate side that you're going to want to talk to. So that might be something you need to look into. And then as far as, this isn't necessarily an advisor, but just general fees, there's insurance items that you need to think about, whether it be reps and warranties insurance, which would be, it's basically insurance for the deal itself that you may need to split with the buyer. That's a little less common in deals the size that we're talking about.
Usually that's for much larger deals, right?
Yeah, usually you want at least something in the $50 million enterprise value range to start looking at reps and warranties insurance. And then, you probably want insurance or tail coverage on your current policies to make sure that you're covered for a period post-close after the fact, depending on how your policy is structured.
And those tail coverage policies are not usually very expensive.
No, they're pretty reasonable, but still something you normally want to look into.
Sure. Okay, and then what about some of the hidden things that sellers may not be thinking about that they're going to have to pay for post-close, like contract terminations or things like that?
Yeah, that's a good one. Normally, in a cash-free, debt-free deal, the buyer is not going to be paying for the debt that's on the business. But one of the things you don't think about as debt is contracts that need to be terminated as it relates to the overall running the business, because the buyer has their own contract or something that they want to bring into the ecosystem. And so normally those terminations would be considered quasi-debt that the seller needs to pay for themselves, that they normally don't factor in. So this could be things like the operating platform or an accounting system or whatever software license you have for, a year plus. uniforms or Centos is a big one. They're the worst.
Those are the hardest.
Those are the hardest to get out of for sure. But those are just things that you need to keep in mind that might come up that wouldn't necessarily be expected on the front end.
Sure. So we've talked about fees in a deal. I mean, this is all just part of doing a deal. It's all very normal. It's something that a seller, I think, should be expecting to pay. And I think it's normal. It's something that you just have to live with, you have to deal with. And like you said in the beginning, you don't skimp on it.
This could be the most expensive money you've ever saved if you try and pinch pennies on your advisors.
Sure.
It's an investment that you're going to have to make that should pay for itself in spades if it's done correctly.
Sure. Shaun, thank you so much for your time. I think it was very informative. Sell yeah.
Sell yeah. If you're interested in learning more about the potential sale of your HVAC, plumbing, or electrical business, or have general questions about the process, feel free to contact me at Shaun@redwoodservices.com or contact us at redwoodservices.com.